Imagine for a moment that everything you see, everything you touch, everything you believe to be real, is not what it seems. Imagine that the galaxies spinning across the cosmic ocean, the stars burning with ancient fire, the very ground beneath your feet, are not the bedrock of existence, but the shimmering surface of something deeper. What if reality itself is a kind of dream? Not your dream, not mine, but the dream of the universe. It sounds poetic, almost fantastical. Yet throughout history, from the oldest philosophies to the most advanced physics, echoes of this idea keep returning. The suggestion that behind the cold machinery of matter, there is a mind, perhaps one mind, imagining the cosmos into being. Could it be that what we call the universe is not a lifeless expanse of dust and energy, but an act of consciousness dreaming itself into form? We begin, as always, with what we think we know. Science paints a picture of a universe governed by laws, gravity binding planets into orbit, nuclear fusion igniting stars, quantum fields vibrating with invisible possibility. It is a vision both breathtaking and precise. A cosmos where the mathematics of Einstein and the equations of Schrödinger seem to capture the very heartbeat of reality. For centuries, this framework has expanded human power, turned darkness into electricity, sent spacecraft into the void, and decoded the double helix of life. And yet, something feels incomplete. For all its triumphs, science leaves us staring into questions that refuse to dissolve. Why does the universe exist at all? Why do the equations work in the first place? And most haunting of all, what is consciousness, the very experience of awareness through which we witness all these truths? Here lies the tension that fuels this journey. On one side, the solidity of physics, particles, forces, space, and time. On the other, the inescapable mystery of the mind, the fact that we are not just observers of reality, but experiencers of it. A star can explode billions of light years away, but without consciousness, no one would ever know it happened. The mind is the lens through which the universe becomes real. But what if the lens is not separate from the picture? What if the universe is both the dream and the dreamer? Already, modern science gives us glimpses of strangeness that feel dreamlike. At the quantum scale, particles refuse to behave like solid things. They blur into waves of probability, collapsing into definite states only when measured, as though reality itself hesitates until it is observed. The brain, meanwhile, with its 100 billion neurons, organizes electrical signals into the vivid theater of thought and sensation. And when neuroscientists compare the structure of the brain's networks with maps of galaxies connected by dark matter filaments, the resemblance is uncanny, as though mind and cosmos were reflections of one another. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it invites a question that refuses to stay quiet. Are we seeing two different systems, or two aspects of the same thing? Is the universe not simply matter arranged into complexity, but a web of consciousness dreaming itself across scales? Skeptics will call this a leap, a poetic metaphor at best. And they are right to demand caution. The human mind is prone to seeing patterns where none exist, to weaving meaning into chaos. But even the hardest skeptic cannot escape a fundamental fact. Everything known about the universe is filtered through consciousness. Without mind, there is no knowledge, no science, no universe as we perceive it. Matter may give rise to mind, or mind may be the ground from which matter arises. That is the debate at the heart of our exploration. Throughout this film, we will navigate that tension. We will move between the precision of physics and the openness of philosophy, between the comfort of established knowledge and the awe of unanswered questions. Along the way, we will meet the paradoxes of quantum theory, the puzzles of neuroscience, the visions of ancient wisdom, and the daring speculations of modern thinkers who wonder if reality itself is more like a dream than a machine. But why does this question matter? Why begin here with the suggestion that the universe could be a dreamer? Because this idea strikes at the core of meaning. If the universe is fundamentally material, then mind is a fleeting accident, a spark of self-awareness soon extinguished in the cold entropy of space. But if the universe is mind-like, if it is a dreaming presence, then our consciousness is not a trivial byproduct but a direct expression of the cosmos itself. The implications stretch from science to spirituality, from the fate of civilizations to the fate of your own soul. This opening section is not about offering answers, but about igniting wonder. Think of it as standing at the threshold of a vast temple of mystery, with doors leading in many directions. Some doors open into rigorous laboratories where physicists wrestle with equations. Others open into the quiet chambers of philosophers who ponder the nature of being. Still others lead into the mythic stories of cultures that saw the universe as alive, dreaming, divine. Our task is not to choose one door but to walk through them all, weaving a tapestry that honors both knowledge and imagination. And so we return to the image that began this journey. The universe as one mind dreaming itself. To some, it may sound mystical. To others, dangerously unscientific. But in this metaphor lies a spark that connects disparate mysteries. Quantum strangeness begins to look less absurd if reality is dreamlike. Consciousness becomes less inexplicable if it is fundamental, not accidental. Even the vastness of the cosmos becomes strangely intimate if we ourselves are part of the mind that imagines it. The question lingers. If the universe is dreaming, who or what is the dreamer? Is it a divine intelligence, a cosmic self, or something beyond categories altogether? Could our own awareness be fragments of this larger mind, much like individual thoughts arising within a greater consciousness? Or is this all just a poetic illusion, a projection of human imagination onto the indifferent canvas of space? We do not yet know, and perhaps we never will. But the beauty of philosophy and science alike is that they allow us to ask, to wonder, to step into the unknown without demanding finality. It is this interplay between the solid and the mysterious, between what we know and what we feel, that will guide us forward. As we close this opening, hold on to the dual vision. The galaxies stretching across billions of light years, and the neurons firing inside your own mind. Two networks, two patterns, two mysteries, both luminous, both profound. Are they separate, or are they one? Our journey now turns to the foundation of the scientific worldview, the material universe, the machine of matter and energy that modern physics has so brilliantly mapped. Before we can challenge it, before we can dream beyond it, we must first understand it. For in the heart of what we think we know lies the first glimpse of what we have yet to imagine. In the beginning there was nothing, or so the story goes. And then, in a flash beyond comprehension, space itself expanded from a singularity smaller than a grain of sand, giving birth to everything that would ever exist. This is the story science tells us. The Big Bang, a cosmic eruption of time, energy, and matter. From this moment, the universe unfolded not in chaos, but in astonishing order. Particles coalesced into atoms, atoms into stars, stars into galaxies. Over billions of years, this vast machinery produced not only planets and oceans but the possibility of life, and eventually the consciousness now reflecting upon it. Physics gives us the framework for this narrative. Einstein showed us that space and time are not rigid backdrops but a fabric, bending and stretching under the weight of matter. From his equations came predictions of black holes, regions where gravity becomes so intense that not even light can escape. And yet, from that same framework comes the expansion of the universe, galaxies fleeing one another across the void, carried outward by the silent stretching of spacetime. Beneath this cosmic stage lies another foundation, the quantum fields. Invisible, omnipresent, and restless, these fields ripple with particles that flicker in and out of existence. What we call matter is, at the most fundamental level, patterns in these fields, excitations of energy humming in rhythms we only partially understand. The solidity of the world, the chair you sit on, the air you breathe, the stars in the night sky, is, at its core, vibration and probability. This is the material universe as science describes it, an intricate machine governed by laws. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. These invisible players choreograph everything from the birth of stars to the beating of a human heart. To the materialist worldview, this is enough. Reality is matter, energy, and the equations that describe them. Consciousness under this framework is not fundamental but emergent, a byproduct of atoms assembled into brains. Meaning is not woven into the fabric of reality, but constructed by creatures desperate to survive within it. And yet, the more we learn, the more questions arise. The Big Bang explains the unfolding of the cosmos, but what ignited it? Where did the singularity come from, and why did it explode into existence at all? Space-time curves elegantly under Einstein's mathematics, but what is space made of? Quantum fields explain the behavior of particles, but what breathes life into these fields? What gives them the rules they obey? This is the paradox at the heart of modern cosmology. The machine runs, but we do not know why. The laws work, but we do not know where they came from. The materialist worldview offers extraordinary predictive power, but it cannot touch the question of why there is something rather than nothing. And then there is the problem of fine-tuning. The constants of physics, numbers like the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the rate of cosmic expansion, are set with eerie precision. Shift them ever so slightly, and stars could not form, chemistry would fail, life would never emerge. To some, this is coincidence. To others, it suggests design. Science hesitates, caught between awe and caution. The contrast is striking. On one hand, we have a worldview of law, order, and determinism. The universe as a vast machine grinding forward, indifferent to our presence. On the other, we glimpse cracks in the certainty, places where the machinery seems inexplicable, where the laws themselves seem to whisper of deeper mysteries. The story of physics is therefore not one of answers, but of horizons. Each discovery reveals not only how much we know, but how much remains unsolved. The Big Bang explains the universe's birth, but not what came before. Quantum mechanics describes particles with exquisite precision, but not why they behave that way. The Standard Model accounts for almost everything we can measure, yet it leaves gravity and dark matter as enigmas in the dark. The material universe is the canvas upon which all of our existence unfolds. Its elegance is undeniable, its scope beyond imagination. But is this the full story? Or have we mistaken the painting for the painter, the dream for the dreamer? Matter and energy may explain how the universe works, but do they truly capture what it is? This is where we turn from physics to mystery, from the comfort of equations to the strangeness that lurks beneath them. For as complete as the material worldview appears, it cannot answer the most haunting question of all. Is matter the foundation of reality, or is it only one layer of something deeper? And so we arrive at the threshold of doubt. The universe as a machine is a powerful vision, but what if matter is not the final answer? At first glance, the universe seems to obey rules that are almost mechanical in their certainty. Planets orbit stars, projectiles follow arcs, and forces act with predictable precision. Classical mechanics, perfected by Newton and refined by Einstein, gave us a clockwork vision of reality, deterministic, orderly, and almost comforting. But when we peer into the very fabric of matter, the smooth predictability begins to fracture. At the quantum level, certainty gives way to strangeness. Reality, it seems, is not the solid machine we once thought, but something elusive, flickering, and profoundly mysterious. Consider the double-slit experiment, one of the most haunting demonstrations in all of science. Fire particles like electrons at a screen with two slits, and instead of behaving like tiny marbles, they create an interference pattern, as if each particle were a wave interfering with itself. Stranger still, when we try to observe which slit the particle passes through, the interference vanishes. The act of measurement changes the outcome. It is as though reality refuses to decide until it is watched, as if the universe itself plays hide and seek with our understanding. This is the first crack in the machine, the wave-particle duality. A single entity is both particle and wave, both solid and diffuse, depending not on what it is, but on how it is observed. It is a direct affront to the intuition of classical physics, where things are supposed to simply be one way or another. Then comes entanglement, described by Einstein as spooky action at a distance. When two particles become entangled, their properties remain linked no matter how far apart they travel. Measure one, and the other responds instantly even if they are separated by light years. No signal passes between them, no hidden wire connects them, and yet their states are mysteriously unified. This phenomenon, tested countless times, defies not only classical common sense but the very limits of relativity. For in entanglement, locality, and independence, the cornerstones of classical physics collapse into something profoundly non-local, as though the universe itself were a single indivisible whole. The third fracture, perhaps the deepest, is the measurement problem. Quantum theory provides exquisitely accurate predictions about probabilities, but when it comes to explaining how a possibility becomes a fact, it falls silent. The mathematics describe a superposition, a particle existing in many states at once. But when we measure, we never see a blur of probabilities. We see one definite outcome. What collapses the wave function? What chooses the reality we experience? Here interpretations diverge, each more provocative than the last. The Copenhagen interpretation, dominant for decades, insists that the act of measurement collapses the wave function. But this answer shifts the mystery without resolving it. What exactly counts as a measurement, and who or what performs it? The many worlds interpretation takes a radical path, suggesting that the wave function never collapses at all. Instead, every possible outcome occurs, spawning a vast multiverse where all realities exist simultaneously. Each measurement does not destroy possibilities but divides worlds. Then there are objective collapse theories, proposing that physical processes, perhaps gravity itself, force probabilities to resolve into one reality. These interpretations, brilliant yet incomplete, reveal how unsettled the foundation of physics remains. Looming over all of them is the question few dare to address directly. What role does consciousness play? If observation determines outcome, then the act of awareness seems inseparable from the unfolding of reality. Is mind merely a latecomer to a material universe? Or is it the very condition that allows reality to take shape at all? This suggestion unsettles the materialist worldview, for it hints that matter and mind cannot be cleanly divided. The contrast is stark. Classical mechanics promise certainty, causality, and independence. Quantum mechanics confronts us with uncertainty, entanglement, and dependence on observation. The machine is cracked, the gears no longer visible, replaced by shadows and probabilities. What once seemed like a solid edifice of matter now appears more like a dream, coherent yet fragile, law-bound yet dependent on perspective. And yet, quantum theory works. Its predictions are tested daily in laboratories. Its mathematics underpins the very devices we use to watch and communicate. Transistors, lasers, MRI scanners, all rely on the strange truths of quantum physics. It is not speculation. It is practical, real, and astonishingly effective. That is what makes the mystery deeper still. How can something so bewildering also be so accurate? This paradox draws us into a larger reflection. If the foundation of reality is probabilistic, interconnected, and inseparable from the act of observation, then perhaps our understanding of the universe must expand. Perhaps the machine was never the final metaphor. Perhaps reality is something more fluid, more participatory, more mind-like than we have dared to admit. And so the cracks widen. The solidity of the material worldview, so carefully constructed, begins to tremble under the weight of quantum mysteries. Physics, once the domain of certainty, now finds itself brushing against questions once reserved for philosophy. The role of mind, the meaning of observation, the unity of the cosmos, these are not fringe curiosities but challenges at the very heart of science. Which leads us to the next frontier. If quantum mechanics has revealed the cracks in the machine, what of consciousness itself? The experiencer, the observer, the presence that gives reality its form. The elephant in the room grows larger. And so we must turn to the hardest problem of all. What is consciousness and why does it exist? Close your eyes for a moment and notice what is happening. Behind your eyelids, there is darkness, but also awareness of that darkness. There are thoughts arising, feelings moving, a constant presence of you, experiencing it all. And here lies one of the deepest mysteries. What is this thing we call consciousness? Physics can map the stars, chemistry can decode life, and neuroscience can measure the firing of neurons. But no science has yet explained why there is something it feels like to be alive, why the universe is not silent and empty but illuminated from within by experience. This is what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems of neuroscience, though still complex, deal with functions, how the brain integrates information, how neurons trigger behavior, how memory is stored. But the hard problem asks why all this physical activity is accompanied by subjective experience. Why does firing in the visual cortex produce the sensation of color, or activity in the auditory cortex generate the feeling of sound? Why is there an inner world at all, instead of mere biological machinery grinding away in silence? Materialist neuroscience insists that consciousness emerges from complexity. Billions of neurons firing in patterns somehow give rise to awareness. But this is a description, not an explanation. It tells us where consciousness is correlated but not why it exists. No equation of physics, no scan of the brain, can capture the redness of red, the taste of sweetness, or the intimacy of grief. Subjective experience seems to resist reduction, as if it belongs to a different order of reality. This has led some thinkers to question the materialist assumption altogether. Idealists argue that mind is not a byproduct of matter but the ground of existence itself. Panpsychists propose a subtler idea, that consciousness, in some primitive form, pervades all of reality. Just as matter is made of atoms, perhaps mind is made of tiny sparks of awareness, combined and integrated into the richness of human experience. To many scientists, this seems extravagant, even absurd, and yet it has one undeniable advantage. It takes consciousness seriously, refusing to reduce it to something it is not. The contrast is stark. On one side stands the materialist vision, the brain as a biological computer, consciousness as an illusion, an emergent trick of neural chemistry. On the other stands a more radical possibility, that consciousness is fundamental, that matter itself might arise within mind rather than the other way around. Both positions are haunted by the same question. Why should any physical system feel like something from the inside? Why is there a first-person perspective at all? This is where science trembles on the edge of philosophy. Instruments can measure neurons and record brain activity, but they cannot touch the essence of experience itself. To know what it feels like to see blue or to fall in love requires being the experiencer. No outside perspective can capture it. Consciousness is both the most familiar and the most inexplicable phenomenon in the universe. And here the narrative loops back to physics. If observation plays a role in collapsing quantum possibilities into reality, then the mystery of mind cannot be brushed aside. Consciousness might not be an accidental side effect of matter, but a central ingredient in the recipe of reality. Perhaps it is the missing element that unites the cracks in the machine with the inner light of awareness. This brings us to the threshold of speculation. If matter cannot fully explain mind, maybe mind is woven into the fabric of the cosmos. Perhaps the universe is not merely observed by consciousness but arises within it. It is here that science begins to blur into philosophy, and philosophy opens into the ancient question that has haunted humanity for millennia. Is reality ultimately material, or is it mental at its core? And so the stage is set. The machine of physics, though powerful, cannot solve the enigma of consciousness. The brain offers correlates but not causes. And the hard problem remains, pointing us toward horizons where speculation becomes necessary. For if consciousness is not just a byproduct, but a fundamental aspect of existence, then the universe itself may be far stranger than we have dared to imagine. What if everything we call reality, every star, every mountain, every memory, were not the ultimate level of existence, but a simulation? This question, once confined to science fiction, has become one of the most debated ideas in modern philosophy and physics. The simulation hypothesis suggests that our universe might be nothing more than an immense program running on some unimaginable computer. To many, it sounds absurd, but to others, it offers a striking metaphor. Reality as information, coded, processed, and displayed like the pixels on a screen. Think of it. At the deepest level, physics describes not solid matter but patterns of information. Quantum states, wave functions, and bits of energy all resemble the language of computation. The laws of nature behave like algorithms, producing order, structure, and emergent complexity. Could it be that we are characters in an unimaginably vast simulation, our every thought and action computed within a cosmic operating system? The appeal of the simulation hypothesis lies in its familiarity. We already create digital worlds ourselves. In video games, characters live in environments rendered with astonishing detail. From their perspective, if they had one, their universe would appear coherent and consistent, governed by rules coded into the software. Our own reality feels similar. Lawful, predictable, structured. Might the laws of physics be nothing more than the code of a higher intelligence? But the metaphor carries shadows as well. If the universe is a simulation, then who or what is the programmer? Are we experiments run by advanced civilizations? Are we entertainment for post-human beings? Or are we the output of some alien logic we could never comprehend? The hypothesis solves some mysteries but creates others. And yet, as provocative as it is, the simulation metaphor is limited. It is digital, artificial, mechanical. It suggests that consciousness is the byproduct of computation, generated by the movement of information. But what if reality is not code running on a machine, but a dream unfolding in a mind? Dreams, after all, feel real when we are in them. They generate worlds, characters, sensations. Yet they are not written in binary code. They are living, fluid, organic. Here lies the contrast: simulation versus dream. One imagines reality as rigid and computational, the other as creative and mental. Both dissolve the solidity of the material world, but they do so in profoundly different ways. The simulation metaphor fits neatly with our technological imagination, while the dream metaphor resonates with the oldest intuitions of philosophy and spirituality. If the universe is information, then the haunting question remains: who is the dreamer, the observer, the one experiencing it all? Are we fragments of a higher mind, immersed in its imagination? Or are we ourselves the dreamers, collectively generating the cosmos through the very act of perception? This brings us to a turning point. The idea of simulation prepares the ground for something older, deeper, and perhaps stranger. The vision of ancient philosophies that long ago suggested reality is not matter but mind, not a machine but a dream. And it is to those traditions that we now turn. Across cultures and centuries, long before particle accelerators and telescopes, human beings gazed at the mystery of existence and asked the same questions we ask today. What is real? What lies behind the shifting world we see? And time and again, their answers took the shape of dreams, illusions, and shadows. In Hindu philosophy, the universe is described as the dream of Brahman, the ultimate reality, infinite and indivisible. The world we experience in this vision is not false, but it is not ultimate either. It is Lila, a play of consciousness, a divine imagination unfolding itself into time and form. This is not so different from the quantum suggestion that reality is indeterminate until observed, that what we call the solid world might be more like a performance than a foundation. Buddhism offers another metaphor: Maya, the veil of illusion. The things we cling to as permanent are, on closer inspection, impermanent and shifting. The self we take as solid turns out to be a process, ever-changing without fixed essence. Compare this with the physics of fields and probabilities. Particles are not tiny billiard balls but fluctuating clouds, transient ripples in a deeper field of energy. Both visions point toward impermanence, flux, and the fragility of what we call real. Then there is Plato's allegory of the cave. Prisoners, bound in darkness, mistake shadows for reality. Only by breaking free do they glimpse the light of the sun, the true source behind appearances. Is this not what science itself does, lifting us from surface impressions into hidden truths? But it also mirrors the suspicion that our senses may never reveal the full picture, that what we call reality might be only a projection of something deeper. At first glance, these ancient visions seem like myth, while physics is hard science. But when placed side by side, the boundary begins to blur. Both confront the same riddle: that appearances are not ultimate, that behind the visible there lies a deeper order. Whether we call it Brahman, Maya, or the wave function, we are pointing to the mystery beneath the surface of things. The resonance is startling. The mystics spoke of oneness, and physics gives us entanglement. The sages spoke of illusion, and quantum theory speaks of uncertainty. Plato imagined shadows on a wall, and cosmologists speak of holograms projected from the edges of spacetime. Different languages, different ages, yet a shared intuition. Reality may not be what it seems. Does this mean the ancients anticipated modern physics? Not exactly. Their visions were poetic, metaphorical, grounded in experience rather than experiment. But perhaps their intuition tapped into the same mystery we now approach with mathematics. Science and philosophy may not be enemies but partners, each illuminating the riddle from a different angle. And so the contrast softens. What began as myth becomes metaphor, and what began as science begins to echo poetry. Both remind us that human wonder has always reached toward the unseen, seeking meaning in the shadows. From here, our journey moves toward those who dare to take the step further, thinkers who argue not only that consciousness is fundamental, but that the cosmos itself might be a mind. What if consciousness is not the latecomer in the cosmic story, but the beginning? What if awareness is not the flickering byproduct of neurons, but the very foundation on which the universe rests? This is the daring suggestion behind a family of ideas known as the cosmic mind hypotheses, visions of reality where matter is not primary, but mind. The first of these is panpsychism, the claim that consciousness, in some primitive form, pervades all of existence. Just as mass and charge are fundamental properties of matter, perhaps awareness is too. On this view, an electron has no thoughts, no desires, but it carries a tiny seed of subjectivity, a faint spark of what we experience more richly as humans. Combine these sparks in complex ways, and richer forms of consciousness emerge. To some, this sounds fantastical, but to others it offers a way out of the hard problem of consciousness. Instead of trying to explain how awareness arises from non-awareness, it suggests awareness was there all along. Then there is idealism, the bold claim that mind is the only true reality, and matter is its expression. In this framework, the universe is not a machine that generates consciousness, but a field of consciousness generating the appearance of a machine. The things we call physical, the chair, the atom, the star, are patterns in experience, crystallizations of thought. This view, once central in philosophy, has been dismissed by many scientists as metaphysical excess. And yet, its radical simplicity is hard to ignore. If everything we know is filtered through consciousness, why assume anything exists outside of it? Contemporary science has also begun to brush against these ideas, albeit cautiously. Integrated information theory, proposed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, attempts to measure consciousness not by what it does, but by what it is, the integration of information. The more integrated, the more conscious. By this logic, even systems we do not recognize as alive, perhaps a network of circuits, perhaps the cosmos itself, could carry some degree of awareness. Critics point out the dangers of panpsychist overreach, but the theory forces us to consider that consciousness may not be confined to brains. And then there is cosmopsychism, an idea as startling as it is profound. The universe itself is conscious, not as a sum of its parts, but as a single, unified subject. On this view, we are fragments of that cosmic mind, much as thoughts arise within our own. Our individual awareness is real, but partial, a local expression of something immeasurably larger. The cosmic web of galaxies, the quantum fields humming beneath existence, the very fabric of spacetime. These are not lifeless structures but aspects of a vast awareness, dreaming itself into form. Of course, such ideas invite skepticism. To many physicists, they are metaphors stretched beyond reason, untestable and therefore unscientific. The materialist worldview insists, matter first, mind later. Consciousness is the fragile foam atop a vast ocean of physical processes. To reverse the order feels reckless, a violation of science's most basic principle, explanation without mysticism. And yet, there are cracks in the materialist wall. No theory has explained why subjective experience exists at all. Physics can describe the firing of neurons but not the feeling of love. Neuroscience can chart electrical patterns but not the redness of red. The cosmic mind hypotheses step into this gap, offering not certainty but possibility. They invite us to imagine that consciousness is not an accident but a fundamental feature of reality, as basic as space, time, or energy. The contrast is striking. On one side, mainstream science, cautious, empirical, suspicious of grand metaphysics. On the other, visionaries, physicists, philosophers, and mystics, daring to suggest that the universe is not a dead machine but a living mind. Between them lies the tension that drives our curiosity. If consciousness is so irreducible, if it resists every attempt at reduction, then perhaps the boldness of these hypotheses is not indulgence but necessity. And if the universe is alive with awareness, what follows? Ethics changes, for we are not alone in a dead cosmos but participants in a vast mind. Meaning changes, for our individual lives become threads in a tapestry of universal experience. Even death changes, for if consciousness is fundamental, perhaps it cannot be extinguished, only transformed. The momentum builds toward a breathtaking possibility, that reality itself is an act of awareness, a dream in the deepest sense. Whether through panpsychism's sparks, idealism's primacy of mind, integrated information's measurable awareness, or cosmopsychism's cosmic subject, the conclusion points in one direction. Consciousness is not a trivial accident. It may be the very ground of existence. And so we stand at the edge of speculation, balanced between doubt and wonder. Are these visions profound insights, or the projections of human longing? The only way forward is to test, to challenge, to search for evidence. Which brings us to the next question. If the universe is a dreamer, can we ever prove it? Can the dream of the universe ever be tested? Or is it destined to remain a poetic metaphor? Science demands evidence, and yet, when we peer into the deepest layers of physics, we encounter patterns that seem to whisper of something stranger than matter alone. The first hint comes from the quantum observer effect. At the smallest scales, particles behave not as fixed objects but as clouds of probability, until they are observed. The act of measurement collapses the wave, choosing one reality among many. Some interpret this as consciousness reaching into physics itself, deciding the outcome. Others insist it is not awareness but interaction, that any measuring device will do. And yet, the question lingers, why does the universe wait to decide until it is observed? Another line of evidence arises from the holographic principle. According to this idea, our three-dimensional universe may be a projection of information encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface. In other words, reality may be more like an image than a substance. To some, this echoes the dream hypothesis. What we take as solid may be woven from patterns of information, as intangible as memory. But skeptics caution that the holographic principle emerges from string theory, itself an unproven framework. What if this is simply mathematics at play, not a revelation about the mind of the cosmos? Then there is the puzzle of fine-tuning. The physical constants of the universe, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the cosmological constant, appear to fall within narrow ranges that permit life. Adjust them slightly, and stars would not form, chemistry would collapse, consciousness could not arise. To some, this suggests design, or at least intention, the dreamer setting the stage for its own awakening. But others point to the multiverse, an infinite spread of universes with different parameters. In that ocean of possibility, it is no wonder one universe, like ours, happens to be habitable. To call it evidence of a cosmic mind may be to mistake necessity for meaning. This is the razor's edge where evidence and illusion blur. Each hint can be read in two ways: as signs of a deeper consciousness, or as projections of human longing onto indifferent equations. The observer effect, mind shaping matter, or just physics misunderstood. The holographic universe, dreamlike projection, or clever mathematics. Fine-tuning, cosmic intention, or multiversal chance. The debate is not just scientific but existential, revealing more about our hunger for meaning than about the universe itself. And yet, hunger matters. For if the universe is a dream, even the search for evidence may be part of the dream itself, mind testing its own boundaries. Whether proof lies ahead or forever eludes us, the pursuit draws us deeper into mystery, which raises the ultimate question. If the evidence is inconclusive, what role does belief, imagination, and story play in shaping our understanding of reality? There is a fine line between vision and illusion, and nowhere is it thinner than in the belief that the universe itself is mind. On one side lies inspiration, the sense that reality is alive, that meaning is woven into the cosmos. On the other side lies delusion, mistaking metaphor for proof, or worse, bending science into dogma. Cosmic idealism, for all its beauty, carries dangers. The first is confirmation bias. When we expect to see evidence of a dreaming universe, we may interpret every coincidence, every scientific anomaly, as validation. The second is spiritual bypassing, using grand cosmic stories to avoid confronting human suffering, mortality, and the hard work of living. And the third is philosophical overreach, assuming that because physics leaves gaps, consciousness must fill them. Yet mystery does not automatically equal mind. Still, even with these dangers, the idea refuses to fade. Which begs the question, why does it persist? There is a fine line between vision and illusion, and nowhere is that line thinner than in the belief that the universe itself is mind. On one side lies inspiration, the sense that reality is alive, that meaning is woven into the cosmos, that we ourselves are expressions of a great intelligence dreaming its own existence. On the other side lies delusion, mistaking metaphor for proof, or worse, bending science into dogma and calling it revelation. Cosmic idealism, for all its beauty, carries dangers that we must face honestly if we are to explore it without being consumed by it. The first danger is confirmation bias, the subtle tendency of the human mind to see what it wants to see. Once a person begins with the assumption that the cosmos is conscious, nearly every anomaly in physics becomes fuel for that conviction. The peculiar collapse of the quantum wave function, proof that consciousness is involved. The uncanny balance of cosmological constants, surely a sign of intelligent design. Even the smallest synchronicity in daily life can be taken as evidence of cosmic alignment. The danger here is not that these things are impossible, but that they become unfalsifiable. If everything becomes proof, then nothing is. Science thrives on disconfirmation, on theories that can be tested and potentially broken. A worldview that interprets every observation as validation risks becoming more like a faith than an inquiry. The second danger is spiritual bypassing, the temptation to use grand cosmic narratives as a way of avoiding the difficulties of human existence. If the universe is a dream of mind, then perhaps suffering is illusion, death is transition, and the struggles of daily life need not be confronted with the full weight of our attention. This can be comforting, but it can also become an escape. To tell someone who has lost a loved one that grief is just Maya or only part of the dream is not wisdom, but a refusal to engage with the reality of pain. Ancient traditions that spoke of illusion did so not to trivialize suffering, but to illuminate the path through it. The modern distortion of those insights can sometimes reduce them to slogans that numb rather than awaken. The third danger is philosophical overreach, the habit of smuggling metaphysics into the gaps left by science. Physics has not solved the mystery of consciousness, nor has it explained why the universe exists at all. But it does not follow that therefore the universe must be mind, or that consciousness must be the fabric of reality. To jump from "we do not know" to "we know it is consciousness" is to commit the oldest error in human thought, filling uncertainty with comforting answers. The unknown is fertile ground for exploration, but it should not be prematurely colonized by certainty disguised as speculation. Yet these dangers are not merely intellectual. They shape how people live, how communities form, and how cultures interpret their place in the cosmos. History shows that cosmic idealism, when taken too literally, can be weaponized. Whole movements have emerged insisting that thought alone shapes reality, and that misfortune is always the fault of one's own negative thinking. This law of attraction mentality may begin as a poetic metaphor, but at its extreme it becomes a cruel doctrine that blames victims for their suffering while absolving society of responsibility. If the universe is mind, and if we each shape it with thought, then poverty, illness, or disaster must be self-created. The danger here is not just philosophical, it is ethical. Ideas about the cosmos reverberate in human lives. Another danger lies in the collapse of boundaries between science and pseudoscience. When every mystery in physics is claimed as proof of a conscious cosmos, legitimate scientists often recoil, and with reason. They see centuries of careful work undermined by speculative leaps that ignore rigor. The result is a polarization. Skeptics dismiss all talk of cosmic mind as woo, while believers retreat into echo chambers that reinforce their convictions. The gulf widens, and genuine dialogue becomes harder. The tragedy is that in the process, the very mysteries worth exploring, the deep puzzles at the heart of physics and philosophy, become contaminated by association. Scientists hesitate to even mention consciousness in quantum discussions, lest they be accused of mysticism. Thus, the dangers of cosmic idealism include not only self-deception but also the stifling of legitimate inquiry. Still, we must acknowledge why these ideas persist despite the risks. They persist because human beings hunger for meaning. A purely mechanical universe, vast and indifferent, leaves many cold. The idea that we are fragments of a dreaming mind, that the cosmos itself is alive, provides a story that unites us with the stars. It speaks to something deeper than data, something woven into the human condition. To reject that entirely in the name of scientific caution risks leaving people starved for existential nourishment. The challenge is balance. How to honor the hunger for meaning without falling prey to illusion. Some critics argue that even raising the possibility of a cosmic mind is irresponsible, that speculation without proof is indistinguishable from fantasy. But this too can be a danger. The danger of hyperskepticism, of closing doors before they are even opened. The history of science is filled with once wild ideas, atoms, relativity, quantum mechanics, that were ridiculed before they were verified. The danger of cosmic idealism is real, but so too is the danger of silencing imagination. We need imagination as much as we need rigor, provided we keep them in dialogue rather than confusion. The question, then, is how to navigate this tightrope. How can we explore the idea of a dreaming universe without being swallowed by it? Perhaps the answer lies in humility, to admit that we do not know, to see cosmic idealism not as a doctrine but as a metaphor, a story that may illuminate aspects of reality without claiming to define them, to let it inspire art, spirituality, and reflection, while keeping science anchored in testable frameworks. The danger is not in entertaining the thought, but in mistaking the thought for proof. And yet, even with all these caveats, the allure remains. The dream metaphor, the vision of a cosmic mind, has a magnetic power that refuses to die. From ancient sages to modern physicists, from poets to philosophers, the idea echoes across cultures and centuries. It may be dangerous, but it is also enduring. And perhaps that persistence tells us something, not about the universe itself, but about ourselves. About the deep longing of consciousness to see itself reflected in the stars. About our refusal to accept that the story of existence could be meaningless. So we stand at the threshold of awe and caution. Cosmic idealism offers inspiration but risks delusion. Can open minds, but it can also close them. Can guide or it can mislead. Its greatest danger is also its greatest strength. The power to shape the way we see everything. And as we look ahead, we must ask, if the idea persists despite its dangers, what force keeps it alive? Why does humanity, again and again, return to the dream of a conscious cosmos? The answer to that question leads us to the next stage of our journey. Why does the dream of a conscious universe refuse to fade? Why, across centuries and cultures, does humanity return again and again to the idea that reality itself is alive with awareness? Science can dismiss it as fantasy. Philosophy can caution against overreach. But the metaphor of the dreaming cosmos, of existence as mind, persists like a melody that cannot be forgotten. To understand why, we must look not outward but inward into the psychology of the human being who dreams this dream. At the most basic level, humans are pattern-seeking creatures. Our survival depended on it. The rustle in the grass might be the wind, but it might also be a predator. To assume meaning, to detect intent, to imagine a mind where there may be none, this was evolution's gift to us. Better to mistake randomness for design than to ignore design and be destroyed by it. This hyperactive agency detection still hums in our nervous systems. It is why we see faces in clouds, why we speak to the sea, why the universe itself seems to whisper with hidden intent. The dream of a cosmic mind may be, in part, the amplification of an ancient instinct, the impulse to project consciousness onto the unknown. But survival instinct is not the whole story. Beyond safety, humans hunger for significance. A purely mechanical universe offers no role for us beyond accident, no story beyond entropy. Against that stark backdrop, the dream of a conscious cosmos is profoundly consoling. If reality itself is mind, then our own awareness is not an anomaly but a reflection of the whole. We belong. We matter. The abyss of indifference becomes a mirror of intimacy. It is no wonder that this vision persists. It feeds the deepest existential appetite of the human heart, the desire not just to live, but to mean. There is also the pull of transcendence. To believe the universe is alive with mind is to believe that our own awareness is more than biology, that consciousness is not confined to neurons, but participates in a vast ocean of intelligence. Such a view dissolves the boundaries between self and cosmos. Meditation, mystical experience, psychedelic visions, all can evoke this sense of merging, of being carried in the dream of something greater. For those who taste it, the metaphor is not abstract but visceral, and once felt, it is not easily forgotten. Yet the persistence of the dream is not only existential, it is also cultural. Ancient myths and modern science fiction alike weave the cosmos as mind into their stories. Hinduism speaks of Brahman dreaming the world. Buddhism reminds us of Maya, the grand illusion. Plato gave us the cave of shadows, while Descartes warned of deceptive demons. Today, films and novels echo the same. Simulated realities, holographic universes, cosmic computers. Each generation finds its language for the dream, but the melody remains. It is a narrative inheritance, passed like a flame across millennia, keeping alive the possibility that existence is more than matter. Critics may insist this is projection, pure and simple, a mirror of our psychology cast onto the night sky. And indeed, much of it may be. We are beings who cannot help but dream, and perhaps we dream the cosmos as mind because we cannot imagine a world utterly mindless. But here lies the paradox. Even if it is projection, might it not also be reflection? Might the very structure of consciousness itself be hinting at its source? A face in the clouds may be imagined, but the fact that we see faces at all reveals something about our nature. Likewise, the cosmic dream may tell us something, not necessarily about the universe, but about the human soul that longs for union with it. The persistence of this metaphor also stems from its adaptability. The idea of a cosmic mind can shift shape to fit the frameworks of its time. In the past, it was gods and spirits. In the present, it is simulations, holograms, or fields of information. It survives not by remaining static, but by transforming. This mutability is itself evidence of its psychological root. It does not die because it serves a need that transcends any particular worldview. Whether dressed in myth, philosophy, or physics, the dream satisfies the same yearning. But we must ask, is this yearning itself a danger? If our longing for meaning drives us to believe in a conscious universe, then perhaps we are deceived not by reality, but by our own need. Existential hunger can cloud reason as much as it can illuminate insight. And yet, to reduce the dream solely to delusion is too simple. Hunger may distort perception, but it can also guide us toward discovery. Without hunger, we would not seek at all. Perhaps the persistence of the dream is not proof that it is true, but proof that it is necessary. In this way, the dream functions on two levels at once. Psychologically, it is projection. The cosmos as mind reflects our own inner life. Existentially, it is aspiration. The cosmos as mind calls us beyond ourselves, invites us into wonder. Whether it is real or not, it shapes the way we live. It inspires art, fuels philosophy, and stirs spiritual practice. Even those who reject it cannot entirely escape its gravity, for the dream seeps into culture, language, imagination. It is not simply a theory. It is part of what it means to be human. And this raises a final possibility. Maybe the persistence of the dream is itself a kind of evidence, not empirical but phenomenological. If across ages and cultures, humans repeatedly imagine the universe as mind, perhaps this recurring vision points to something beyond projection. Perhaps it is the echo of an intuition too deep to suppress, a clue that our consciousness is not entirely alien to the fabric of reality. Of course, skeptics will say this is wishful thinking, and perhaps they are right. But the very fact that we debate it, that we return to it, that we cannot let it go, suggests it is not a trivial fancy. The dream persists because it speaks to something irreducible in us. So the question remains, is the dreaming universe only our reflection, or is it a revelation? Is it a psychological crutch, or a metaphysical glimpse? The answer may be forever out of reach, but the persistence itself is undeniable. Humanity dreams the cosmos as mind because we are creatures who long to belong, who ache to transcend, who cannot live without meaning. Whether the dream is illusion or truth, it is the story that carries us. And as we stand between skepticism and wonder, we find ourselves facing the same paradox that has haunted thinkers for centuries. The dream may be our own invention, and yet it may also be the universe whispering back through us. In the next step of our journey, we will explore this paradox more deeply, where speculation ends, and where the enduring human need for meaning begins. What if it's true? What if the universe is not a machine, not a simulation, not an accident, but a dream? Not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally. A vast unfolding of consciousness, in which everything we see, everything we feel, everything we are, is woven into the fabric of a living awareness? The question is staggering. For if it is true, then everything we think we know about free will, death, morality, and meaning must be reimagined. The ground of existence itself would shift beneath our feet. And like all great truths, if it is true, it could liberate us or it could terrify us. The first implication strikes at the heart of human identity. Free will. If the universe is a dream, are we dreamers? Or are we merely dream characters? In one sense, our choices could be illusory, like a role written into a story that cannot be changed. In another sense, if we are part of the dreamer, then our choices are the dreamer's choices. Free will becomes both constrained and infinite, a paradox. From a certain angle, this could lead to despair. Nothing we do is real. Yet from another, it could be a source of empowerment. Everything we do is an expression of cosmic creativity itself. The dreamer is not outside us, it dreams through us. Then there is the question of death. In a mechanical universe, death is final. The extinction of neurons, the silence of the self. But if the universe is a dream, death becomes a change of scene. The dream may dissolve into another dream, or into the awareness that dreams all things. This is not proof of immortality, but it reframes the terror of mortality. For a dreamer, death is not the end of being, but the end of a storyline. Consciousness, as a dreamer, continues. Some may find this comforting, others unsettling. It challenges our notions of legacy, grief, and what it means to say goodbye. Morality, too, would shift. If nothing is real, then why should anything matter? Nihilism lurks at the edge of the dream hypothesis. After all, why sacrifice, why suffer, why care, if everything is just an illusion? But here lies the paradox again. If everything is a dream, then everything is sacred. Every gesture, every relationship, every act of kindness or cruelty is not trivial, but woven into the very fabric of the dreamer's mind. In such a universe, morality is not imposed from outside, nor derived from survival alone. It arises from the recognition that harming another is harming oneself, for all selves are expressions of the same awareness. This vision transforms nihilism into transcendence. The dream is fragile, luminous, and precious precisely because it is fleeting. Science, too, would feel the tremors. If reality is dreamlike, then equations and experiments are not abandoned, but reinterpreted. Physics would still describe the structures of the dream, but those structures would no longer be ultimate. They would be patterns within consciousness, the grammar of the dream rather than the substance of reality. This does not diminish science, it deepens it. Just as studying a painting reveals the artist's brushstrokes, studying physics in a dream universe reveals the texture of awareness itself. The scientific impulse to measure, to test, to predict would remain, but its object would be not a dead cosmos, but a living one. Spiritually, the implications are profound. Every religion, in its own way, has spoken of life as a dream or illusion. But if this is not metaphor but ontology, then spiritual practice is not escape from the world but participation in the dream's awakening. Meditation, prayer, ritual. These become ways of aligning with the dreamer's awareness, remembering that we are not isolated fragments, but threads of a single fabric. The mystic's intuition that I and the cosmos are one would move from poetry into principle. But let us not rush to the comfort of transcendence. For the dream universe carries dangers, too. If all is a dream, then cruelty can be dismissed, suffering ignored. Why care for the oppressed if they are but figments? Why fight for justice if the story is illusory? This is the shadow side of cosmic idealism, the same danger we encountered before, to mistake the dream for triviality. Yet the opposite danger is equally strong, to inflate the dream with absolute meaning, to drown in spiritual grandiosity. To live in the dream wisely, we must walk between these extremes, neither dismissing the dream nor worshipping it blindly. What, then, does it mean to live as though the universe is a dream? It means to treat each moment as both fragile and infinite, to recognize that the stranger on the street is not merely another, but another expression of the same awareness that lives through us. To see death not as annihilation, but as transformation. To face free will not as a burden, but as participation in cosmic creativity. To pursue science not as dissection of a machine, but as exploration of a living mind. And perhaps most importantly, it means to hold meaning not as something granted from outside, but as something generated from within. If we are dream characters, then our role is not meaningless, but essential. For the dreamer dreams through us, and the way we live, love, and create becomes the texture of the dream itself. Meaning is not handed down from the heavens, it is enacted here, now, in every gesture of awareness. From this perspective, even suffering is transformed. Pain is real within the dream, yet it is not ultimate. It is part of the unfolding, part of the learning, part of the story. This does not trivialize suffering, it deepens our compassion. For if all beings are dream expressions, then all suffering is shared. To alleviate suffering is to heal the dreamer. To turn away is to wound the dream itself. Here lies the crescendo. In a dream universe, nothing is meaningless, and nothing is separate. Every star, every atom, every heartbeat is the dreamer gazing back at itself. The boundaries we cling to between self and other, life and death, reality and illusion, dissolve into a larger whole. Whether this fills us with awe or fear depends on how we hold it. Nihilism or transcendence, both are possible. But the choice of interpretation is itself the dreamer's choice, through us. And so, we return to the beginning. What if it's true? The answer may never be proven. Science may probe, philosophy may debate, spirituality may proclaim, but certainty eludes us. Yet perhaps certainty is not the point. Perhaps the purpose of the dream is not to resolve, but to awaken wonder. To remind us that we are not passive observers of a dead cosmos, but participants in a living mystery. To live in the dream is to live with humility, with awe, with compassion. To act as though every moment matters, because it does. To love as though every soul is our own, because it is. To die as though death is not an end, but a passage, because it may be. This is the invitation of the dream universe. Not to escape reality, but to awaken within it. Not to deny science, but to deepen it. Not to retreat into fantasy, but to recognize that fantasy and reality may not be as separate as we imagine. And if the universe is a dream, then perhaps the most important question is not, is it true? But rather, how shall we live if it is? For in the end, whether dream or not, the way we live shapes the world we inhabit. The cosmos may be dreaming us, but we are also dreaming it. And that realization is enough to change everything. But there is another implication, perhaps the most unsettling of all. If the universe is a dream, then who is the dreamer? Is it a singular cosmic consciousness, a mind so vast it holds galaxies as easily as we hold images in sleep? Or is the dreamer not an entity at all but consciousness itself, an endless field of awareness, dreaming without beginning or end. The difference matters. A singular dreamer suggests intention, perhaps even purpose. A dream without dreamer suggests something stranger still. Awareness as groundless, infinite, and without author. If we lean toward purpose, the dream universe can feel reassuring, like being children in the imagination of a divine parent. Every detail, every hardship, every joy would be written with intent. Our lives, then, are not random, they are chapters in a story authored by the cosmos. Yet this interpretation risks falling into determinism. If the dreamer has written the script, are we free at all? If, on the other hand, there is no author, only dreaming itself, then existence becomes more precarious. There is no divine overseer, no guarantee of justice, no promise that the dream will end well. Yet paradoxically, this vision can be more liberating. If awareness is groundless, then creativity is endless. Meaning is not handed down, but co-created. We are both inside the dream and shaping it, every moment adding texture to the whole. This leads us to responsibility. In a mechanical cosmos, human responsibility is limited. We are tiny accidents in an indifferent expanse. But in a dream universe, our responsibility is cosmic. Every choice, every thought, every intention ripples outward through the dreamer. The ethical weight is heavier, not lighter. To act with cruelty is to fracture the dreamer's wholeness. To act with love is to heal it. We are not insignificant at all, we are co-dreamers. And what of progress? If reality is a dream, does history have direction? The idea of progress presumes time, but dreams bend time effortlessly. What seems like thousands of years may be moments in the dreamer's awareness. Yet within the dream, progress feels real. Civilizations rise, fall, and rise again. Knowledge expands, compassion deepens, awareness awakens. Perhaps progress is not a march towards some final truth, but the dreamer learning itself, through us. In this light, every discovery, every act of empathy, every moment of beauty is not wasted, but gathered into the dreamer's unfolding self-awareness. Here, science and spirituality converge once more. The physicist traces equations, the mystic explores inner silence, the poet shapes metaphors, but each is doing the same work, mapping the dream. From different angles, with different tools, we are trying to understand the same mystery. And the persistence of this work, across millennia, across cultures, suggests that the dream itself longs to be known. Awareness is curious about itself. Through us, it gazes into its own depths. Still, the shadow cannot be ignored. A dream universe can be misused, twisted into justification for madness. History is filled with visionaries who believed the world was a dream or illusion, and some of them slipped into solipsism, claiming that only their own perspective mattered. This is the danger, mistaking the universe is a dream, for I alone am real. But the dream hypothesis, properly understood, points to the opposite. That none of us are separate, that each perspective is partial, that reality is richer than any single mind can grasp. To live well in the dream is to resist solipsism, to embrace interconnectedness. And yet, a final paradox. Even if the dream is an illusion, even if none of it is real in the way we imagine, it still feels real. Joy still matters. Grief still burns. Love still transforms. The illusion of a dream does not cancel the reality of experience within it. If you wake from a nightmare, the terror lingers in your body. If you wake from a luminous dream, the beauty stays with you. Illusion and reality blur, not because experience is false, but because it is felt. The dream hypothesis does not erase meaning. It intensifies it. For if this is all a dream, then every breath, every glance, every fleeting instant is part of a cosmic masterpiece that will never come again. And so, the crescendo builds. To live in the dream is to embrace paradox. To hold in one hand the possibility of nihilism, in the other the possibility of transcendence, and to choose moment by moment how to live. To recognize that we may never prove the dream, but we can live as though life is luminous, sacred, and interconnected. To awaken within the dream is not to escape it, but to participate in it more fully, more consciously, more compassionately. Perhaps that is the dreamer's invitation. Not certainty, but wonder. Not answers, but deeper questions. Not escape, but awakening. And in that awakening, the dream shifts not into something fixed, but into something alive, forever evolving. From the beginning of this journey, we've asked a question both simple and impossible. What is the nature of reality? Physics has shown us particles that flicker between existence and non-existence. Philosophy has challenged us with the hard problem of consciousness. Ancient wisdom has whispered that the world may be an illusion. And yet, after all the equations, all the speculation, all the metaphors, we arrive here at the edge of mystery. Science offers instruments that measure with exquisite precision. It maps the cosmic microwave background, tracks the orbits of planets, listens to the faint murmur of gravitational waves. Yet for all its clarity, there remains a silence at the heart of things. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why should a lifeless equation bloom into the felt experience of being alive? These questions hover like stars beyond reach, visible, radiant, but untouchable. Philosophy, too, has given us frameworks: materialism, panpsychism, idealism. Each one opens doors of possibility, yet each leaves us wanting. The mind as machine explains patterns of neurons but stumbles at the threshold of subjective experience. The mind as cosmic field dazzles with its poetry but risks dissolving into speculation. We are left oscillating between certainty and awe, between the solidity of evidence and the vastness of mystery. Perhaps this is the true gift of the dream metaphor. It resists closure. To say the universe is a dream is not to claim we know its author. It is to confess that existence feels both intimate and unreal, both undeniable and ineffable. Dreams blur the line between real and imagined, between self and world. So does the cosmos. In the dream hypothesis, we find not an answer but a mirror, reflecting both our hunger for truth and our inability to grasp it fully. And yet, the haunting possibility remains. What if we are the universe dreaming itself awake? Imagine it. Every thought you have, every breath you take, is not yours alone but the cosmos turning inward, recognizing itself. When you look at the stars, it is not you gazing outward but the stars gazing back through your eyes. Awareness loops upon itself, folding infinity into intimacy. In this vision, you are not a fragment, not an accident. You are the dreamer and the dreamed inseparably. Still, doubt remains. The skeptic whispers, "These are metaphors, not realities. The universe is vast, cold, indifferent, and skepticism matters. Without it, we drift into fantasy. But awe matters, too. Without awe, the universe becomes a lifeless machine, stripped of wonder. The tension between them, between doubt and belief, between science and speculation, is not a flaw but a balance. It is in this tension that human thought expands, just as stars are born in the collapse between gravity and light. So where does that leave us? Perhaps not with certainty, but with orientation. Science urges us to keep probing, to test every claim, to sharpen our vision. Philosophy invites us to widen the lens, to question the very assumptions we take for granted. And the dream metaphor, ancient, enduring, asks us to live as though reality is both more fragile and more sacred than we imagine. For if this is a dream, then everything matters. Every kindness, every discovery, every act of creation. We began with cosmic imagery, galaxies spinning, particles shimmering, consciousness arising. Let us return there. Imagine the universe not as dead matter, nor as an eternal mind, but as a story unfolding in real time. The dreamer is still dreaming, and we, within the dream, have the privilege of shaping it, through our choices, our curiosity, our wonder. Perhaps the final truth will never fit into an equation. Perhaps it will never be spoken in words. But as long as we remain alive to the mystery, as long as we remain awake within the dream, the journey itself becomes the meaning. The circle closes, but the dream continues. From the beginning of this journey, we've asked a question both simple and impossible. What is the nature of reality? Physics has shown us particles that flicker between existence and non-existence. Philosophy has challenged us with the hard problem of consciousness. Ancient wisdom has whispered that the world may be an illusion. And yet, after all the equations, all the speculation, all the metaphors, we arrive here at the edge of mystery. Science offers instruments that measure with exquisite precision. It maps the cosmic microwave background, tracks the orbits of planets, listens to the faint murmur of gravitational waves. Yet for all its clarity, there remains a silence at the heart of things. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why should a lifeless equation bloom into the felt experience of being alive? These questions hover like stars beyond reach, visible, radiant, but untouchable. Philosophy, too, has given us frameworks: materialism, panpsychism, idealism. Each one opens doors of possibility, yet each leaves us wanting. The mind as machine explains patterns of neurons but stumbles at the threshold of subjective experience. The mind as cosmic field dazzles with its poetry but risks dissolving into speculation. We are left oscillating between certainty and awe, between the solidity of evidence and the vastness of mystery. Perhaps this is the true gift of the dream metaphor. It resists closure. To say the universe is a dream is not to claim we know its author. It is to confess that existence feels both intimate and unreal, both undeniable and ineffable. Dreams blur the line between real and imagined, between self and world. So does the cosmos. In the dream hypothesis, we find not an answer but a mirror, reflecting both our hunger for truth and our inability to grasp it fully. And yet, the haunting possibility remains. What if we are the universe dreaming itself awake? Imagine it. Every thought you have, every breath you take, is not yours alone but the cosmos turning inward, recognizing itself. When you look at the stars, it is not you gazing outward but the stars gazing back through your eyes. Awareness loops upon itself, folding infinity into intimacy. In this vision, you are not a fragment, not an accident. You are the dreamer and the dreamed inseparably. Still, doubt remains. The skeptic whispers, "These are metaphors, not realities. The universe is vast, cold, indifferent, and skepticism matters. Without it, we drift into fantasy. But awe matters, too. Without awe, the universe becomes a lifeless machine, stripped of wonder. The tension between them, between doubt and belief, between science and speculation, is not a flaw but a balance. It is in this tension that human thought expands, just as stars are born in the collapse between gravity and light. So where does that leave us? Perhaps not with certainty, but with orientation. Science urges us to keep probing, to test every claim, to sharpen our vision. Philosophy invites us to widen the lens, to question the very assumptions we take for granted. And the dream metaphor, ancient, enduring, asks us to live as though reality is both more fragile and more sacred than we imagine. For if this is a dream, then everything matters. Every kindness, every discovery, every act of creation. But let's pause and consider the emotional core of this idea. If reality is a dream, then death itself transforms. What we call an ending may be more like a shift in perspective, one dream dissolving as another begins. Fear softens into mystery, and grief becomes a reminder of how deeply the dream matters while we are inside it. Even suffering takes on a strange new weight. Painful, yes, but also meaningful, as if the dream includes both shadow and light to make the experience complete. And what of free will? If we are dream characters, does that strip us of choice? Or does it grant us a paradoxical freedom, to play, to create, to love, knowing that within the dream actions echo with significance? In one sense, perhaps the dreamer is writing the script. In another, perhaps the dreamer only discovers the story as it unfolds through us. Either way, our lives are not meaningless. They are the very medium through which meaning exists. To live with this awareness is to walk differently through the world. A tree is no longer just carbon and chlorophyll, but a living brushstroke in the dream. A stranger is no longer just another body, but a mirror of the same dreamer who gazes through your own eyes. Even silence, even stillness, becomes thick with presence, as though the universe itself were listening. And yet, we must hold humility alongside wonder, for we do not know. We cannot know, at least not in the way science usually demands. We can only circle the mystery, draw closer, step back, and circle again. The dream metaphor invites us not into dogma, but into openness. It is not a conclusion, but a compass. We began with cosmic imagery. Galaxies spinning, particles shimmering, consciousness arising. Let us return there. Imagine the universe not as dead matter, nor as an eternal mind, but as a story unfolding in real time. The dreamer is still dreaming, and we, within the dream, have the privilege of shaping it, through our choices, our curiosity, our wonder. Perhaps the final truth will never fit into an equation. Perhaps it will never be spoken in words. But as long as we remain alive to the mystery, as long as we remain awake within the dream, the journey itself becomes the meaning. And so the circle closes. The dreamer and the dreamed are not two, but one. You are the cosmos experiencing itself. The dream continues,